Hello everyone, it's Nina and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing a bookshelf tour on the bookshelf that is behind me. This is the main bookshelf in my apartment that is dedicated to all of the books that I have read. I do have some TBR shelves kind of like scattered across different bookcases in my apartment that aren't dedicated solely to holding books. Me and my wife live in a one-bedroom apartment that only is around like 500 square feet. And since we have other hobbies that take up space, I can't really have like a giant wall dedicated to just my book collection. But I think this is fine because I like to be pretty selective about the books that I bring into my home anyway. And having the space constraints just helped me kind of narrow down and make sure I'm only keeping the books that I really love. So yeah, for this video, we're going to be going through all of the books that I have on the shelf behind me. So I'm going to move around to the back of the camera and give you guys a closer look. So to give a little bit of context, this bookshelf is one of the like half-size versions of the Skinny Billy bookshelves from IKEA. And this one fits well into this really small niche space that is kind of off the side of my kitchen. The other side of this room, it has my Strandbon IKEA armchair, and this space is just kind of overall turned into a little reading nook. I definitely want to do more decoration and overall make this area have a lot more of like a cozy vibe to it. I'm really pleased with what I have so far, and I really like being able to sit here in the mornings and read. So in the future, I definitely want to do like a full tour of this area once I get it looking a little bit more how I ideally would like it to be. But let's go ahead and start looking at the first shelf on my bookcase. The first two books I have here are two of my Madeline Miller books, being The Song of Achilles and Galatea. I also own Circe, but I have like this giant hardback that I couldn't fit with the other ones, so unfortunately the collection has been separated. The next two books here are two of my favorite adult books I read in 2022. The first is Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro, and The Secret History by Donna Tartt. The next two books that are standing upright are two books I have not yet read. The first is The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo, a classic nonfiction book, probably a staple in a lot of people's homes. I actually found this thrifting, and I'm very excited to get to read it, especially since it's pretty quick and also pretty, I think, relevant to a lot of people's lives. And the other book I have here is Dead Collections by Isaac Fellman. This was actually a Christmas gift from Val, and I'm very grateful that she sent it to me. I'm definitely going to read it sometime this year. The next two books I have here are The Night Circus and The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. And then we have the Six of Crows duology, including Six of Crows and Cricket Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. These books are too tall to fit in this shelf, which is why they were laying on the side. Then we have Darius the Great is Not Okay, which is probably one of my favorite YA contemporary books. And lastly, we have the Death Note short story collection. Ideally, I want to put all of my manga on one shelf altogether, but right now, just because of the layout of my bookcase here, there are just some shelves that are a little bit too short to have some of the taller volumes of manga fit in well with the other ones. But it is a goal of mine to maybe move and make some space on a different bookcase in my apartment to have them all be together. The next shelf down has all of my Danmei novels as well as some of my young adult hardback books because they're a little bit too tall for the shelf above, and I had a little bit of overflow from the shelf below. Randomly also shoved in on the top here is the first volume of Boys Run the Riot. This is one of the books that I have yet to read. I got the first volume to just try it out because I had heard it was pretty good. But starting off with my Danmei collection, I have all 4 volumes of The Scum Villain Self-Saving System by MXTX. Then I have the first 3 volumes of The Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, also by MXTX. I do have the 4th and 5th volumes on pre-order, so as soon as they come in, I will definitely be adding them to this shelf as well. Then I have the 1st and 2nd volume of Husky and His White Cat Shizen by Ruobao Bochi Rao, also known as Meat Bun. So far, I've only read the 1st volume of this series. The second one is kind of a new release. It came out at the end of January, so I just haven't had enough time in my schedule to prioritize reading it, but I'm very excited to continue this series and pick up more volumes as they come out. Then I have 2 books in the World at Lake's Edge duology by Lyndall Clipstone. Lake's Edge is one of my kind of like favorite guilty pleasure books from 2022. I have now read the second part of the duology, which is Forcefall, and I definitely did not like it nearly as much as I did the first part. But I am still going to keep both of them in this series. I really like the way they look together, even though I really only prefer the story that's in the first book in the series. And the last book on this shelf is The City Beautiful by Aidan Polydoros. This is a historical, queer, murder mystery type of story. It's a bit of a lot of genres at once, which just makes it hard to describe. I originally read it from the library around this time last year, and I really enjoyed it. And then I kind of felt like I missed it, so I ended up asking for a physical copy to own as a Christmas gift. And luckily that delivered, so now I have that book to hopefully reread in the future. So this shelf primarily has my young adult hardbacks as well as 2 adult books at the end. Also on the shelf, I'm keeping all of my bookmarks. I really need to get like a proper bin to hold them all, but for right now they've just been sitting down here. I also got this little like trinket container from my parents' house. I think it looks really cute, and I think I want to put like maybe like prompts to do like a randomized TBR in the future and keep them in here. But moving those out of the way, the first book that is on this shelf is Belladonna by Adalyn Grace. Then there's a book with an almost identical cover, which is House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. Then we have the first 2 books in the Hollow Star saga, which is A Dark and Hollow Star and A Cruel and Fated Light, both by Ashley Shuttleworth. Then we have the entirety of the Montague Siblings series by Mackenzie Lee. This includes The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, the novella, which is The Gentleman's Guide to Getting Lucky, The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy, and The Nobleman's Guide to Scandal and Shipwrecks. As I've said probably many times on this channel at this point, The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue is probably one of my favorite books of all time. And I just love this entire series so much, and all of the characters in it. It's just such a perfect blend of action and adventure with just a little bit of magic thrown in there. I really love the series, and I definitely want to do a reread of all of it in the future. Then we have the only book that's on this shelf that both I have not read and also technically I do not own because this is my wife's book. This is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. My wife got this from Powell's when we were on our honeymoon in Portland. She read it and really enjoyed it, and I decided to add it to the shelf because I do want to read it for myself in the future as well. And I just thought having it out here would help me kind of keep that in my mind since I don't really consider it one of my books necessarily. So I'm more likely to forget about it since I don't really think about the fact that I own it, if that makes any sense. And the last book on this shelf is Portrait of a Thief by Grace D. Lee. Another criminally underrated like thriller heist book that came out in 2022. I think this book is a lot of fun and definitely has a lot of universal appeal, so I think if you are even just a casual reader, you'll probably enjoy it. Okay, so the last shelf on my bookcase is the shortest one by height. It has the majority of my manga as well as all of my mass market paperbacks. The first 2 are sitting off to the side because I do not have a proper place for them, and those are 2 books in the Mist series. The first one is Mist Book of Atris, and then Mist Book of Tiana. I have read Book of Atris, and I do want to read Book of Tiana in the near future, mostly because I really want to see what the third book that I do not own is like. Technically, they're all kind of like companion books. You don't have to read them in a specific order, but I feel like it makes most sense to read them in publication order. The next set of books I have here are 5 volumes of Ancient Magus Bride by Kora Yamazaki. So far I've only read the first of this series, but I knew I was going to love it, so I decided to continue to collect them just whenever I'm out at a comic book store and feel like I want to add another volume to my collection. I end up picking one up, and I'm very excited to continue and read more of this series. The next volume of manga I have down here is Welcome Back Alice by Shuzo Oshimi. This one I got in the summertime, and to be honest, my interest in it has waned a little bit, not by any fault of the story itself. I just kind of moved on and was interested in other things instead. But I do want to give it a shot, and if I end up not liking this first volume, then I think I have friends that I could easily pass it on to. The next 2 volumes of manga down here are a yaoi series called Border by Kodaka Kazuma. I've read the majority of this series online, but since the volumes are now out of print, I knew I wanted to try and collect as many of the physical English releases as I could. I own the 3rd, 4th, and 5th volumes as well, but they are in storage at my parents' house. But I, for some reason, had never bought the 1st or 2nd volume when they were initially coming out at Borders, so I had to track these 2 volumes down online. Kodaka Kazuma is like one of my favorite mangaka. I love her art style so much, and I have a lot of her doujins that she's done for other series as well. The next 3 books are from the Old Kingdom series by Garth Nix. They make up the original Abhorsen trilogy before he added on other books that came out later. And those are Sabriel, Lirael, and Abhorsen. I love these books and this series so much. I gave both Sabriel and Abhorsen 5 stars, and I gave Lyriel 4.5 stars. And I also absolutely love these mass market paperback versions. I remember reading from the original mass market paperback of Sabriel back when I was in middle school. So when I realized I was missing, I think, Abhorsen, I knew I had to try and find a version of the mass market paperback to continue the set. I also really love the cover illustrations for these versions. And unfortunately, the same artist did not do the covers for the 4th and 5th volumes of this series, which is a little unfortunate because now my series will never be a full matching set. But it's okay because the story will continue throughout, and I'm sure I will love it regardless of what the cover looks like. Then we have a mass market paperback of Dune by Frank Herbert. I originally read from a library copy of this, but I really enjoyed this book, probably one of my favorite sci-fi books that I've read. So when I ended up finding a edition at the thrift store, I knew I had to pick it up for in the future if I ever want to read it again. Then I have a mass market paperback of The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I got this as a freebie from my work. They had just a section of books that you're allowed to put new ones in and take ones out. Kind of like a little free library situation. To be honest, I think I probably will end up returning this to that section in the near future, mostly because I have another edition of The Hobbit. I thought that maybe reading from this one would be a more enjoyable experience just because it's so small and cute, but I feel like I don't need 2 copies of this book, especially when the other one I have is a lot nicer. The next 2 books I have are both Lolita adjacent. The first one is So Pretty, Very Rotten by Jean Mai and Anh Nguyen. I usually describe this book as kind of like an extended zine. It's basically a collection of essays and comics that are about the experience of being in J fashion and Lolita fashion. This book was done by a small independent publisher that I think now does not exist, and for some reason this book is very, very hard to track down online. I'm pretty sure on Amazon it sells for $60 to $100 secondhand, but luckily I got it while it was still in print. It was actually a college graduation gift from one of my friends who is also into Lolita fashion. So it just meant a lot more coming from her, and I'm really lucky that I have this book, and I'm definitely not going to be getting rid of it anytime soon. And the last book on my bookshelf is a bit of a strange one, and that's Japanese Schoolgirl Inferno. This book is basically kind of like a compendium of a bunch of different Japanese street fashions that were common from the 80s, 90s, and up to early to mid 2000s. I remember first reading this book from the library when I was pretty young, probably in middle school, and then I ended up seeing this copy of it at one of those, kind of pop-up bookstores that they'll put into department stores when another store has just closed. Maybe a Book Depot or another brand similar to that. Anyway, this edition of this book is actually absolutely falling apart. I'm pretty sure the spine has completely become unglued, but I still really like it, and I think it's a really fun resource for looking at early Japanese street fashion. All of the illustrations in it are also really creative and cool. So with that last book, we can kind of do a full overall look at all of the books on my shelf. So that is it for my bookshelf tour. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please consider liking this video or subscribing if you aren't already. If you're interested in seeing what books I am reading currently, consider following me on the Storygraph to see me update my reads in real time. But as always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!